Richard was by far the best in tonight's episode. I'm glad he didn't take any of their shit. Big Brother UK 2025 episode 17, and tonight the house was turned into a general hospital. The housemates were split into doctors, nurses, patients, and a matron. So the patients were Tate, Zila, Tasia, Sam, Nancy, and Elsa. The nurses were Cameron and Fairly Shula. Was there another nurse? I can't remember. The doctors were Jenny, Caroline, and Marcus, and the matron was Richard. And I genuinely think that if Richard didn't have that job, they would have failed this task. In tonight's episode, I feel like Jenny was coming across as a bit of a bitch. However, I also think that our sense of humour are quite similar. So if you had to film me out of context, speaking to people in a certain way, I would look like I was being a completely cheeky bitch as well. But when you see like the full situation and the full conversation and you know the person, then you realise that it's just part of the joke. I'm not sure if part of the task was for the doctors to be so bossy and rude. I didn't really understand why they were acting like that. And then when Jenny phoned Richard and she says, "Oh, the patient's sleeping, wake them up." Again, I don't know if that was part of the task for them to not be allowed to sleep. Jenny was shouting at Richard down the phone, and Richard was just like, "When you're going to speak to me with a better attitude, call me back." And I was like, "Yes, Richard, don't take any of the shit. He knows he's in charge of that ward." First of all, the doctors had to diagnose the patients with different illnesses, and I thought actually they'd done a really good job. Elsa was diagnosed as being a lazybones, and her task was to run out into the garden, collect all the pills and put them into a pill box when she heard the sound, and do it before the time ran out. And I actually think that she had fun doing this, and ever since like a couple of episodes ago, or the last episode, when she was saying that she's good at making up random songs, I feel like she's coming out her shell a wee bit more, she's singing her wee songs, she's having a wee bit more fun, and it's good to see like a bit more personality. Tasia was diagnosed with being too whiny, and Caroline had to feed her medication through a syringe, and it was like tasted really bad and smelt really bad, right? And at the time, before Tasia even went off her head at Caroline, I did think to myself, Caroline is being a bit rough, right? And I think it's okay to have a carry on like that with like your really close friends who you have like a kind of physical relationship with that you grab and stuff like that. And I think that Caroline is quite a physical person, because she said in one of the last episodes she thinks that Richard's born because she can't just grab him and put him in a headlock. And I was thinking, I wouldn't like it if somebody grabbed me and put me in a headlock either. But I'm not against physical touch. Like, I'll give you cuddles, hold your hand. Like, some of my pals that like they'll put their hand on your leg or something, and I don't think that's weird. But kind of rough play with somebody like that, it's just not for me. And then also the fact that she was trying to squirt the food in her mouth, I thought she's been a bit like too much here. Then obviously she squirted it on her and it was stinking and it went all over her face, all over her jammies and her covers and stuff. And she was raging and she was like, "We're going to fail the task now because I'm not happy that she done that." And I'm not trying to be a snowflake here, right? I know that Caroline didn't mean it, but I feel like she did take it a wee bit too far. But then when Tasia was in the diary room, she says, "Oh, she better not speak to me again, ever." I feel like the better approach would have just been to say, "Tasia, you need to take this because we might fail the task." Do you know what I mean? And I think that Caroline really did feel bad, because when Tasia done it, she's like, "Oh yay, she took one for the team, great job," and all that. But by that time it was too late. Sam was diagnosed with having no backbone, and his task was to stand and answer questions about the housemates, like brutally honest answers. And I actually thought he done an amazing job. He was saying that Caroline was the most annoying to live with, Richard was the most selfish, and the housemates look up to Fiola for like her opinions. He said that Tasia was the most easily influenced and that she tends to go with whatever Fiola and Zila thinks, but I don't feel as if that's really what we've seen. Obviously he spends all his time here, so he'll know better than us. Then he had to answer who's the most delusional housemate, and he answered Jenny, and he said she thinks she's going to win because me and Nancy fucked up, and she's going to kind of play on that. And he says, "What's Jenny short for? It's not genuine, that's for sure." And I get that he was just trying to be brutal and he was trying to like win the task, right? But I still don't understand why him and Nancy don't think that Jenny's genuine. because I think she comes across on TV anyway as genuine, and I know a lot of people in the comments will disagree with that, because there's people who's saying that they didn't like her from the start. But just because somebody goes around the house and it manages to talk to everybody, I don't think that's weird. Like, I talk to everybody in my work. Do you know what I mean? It's just, that's normal behaviour to me. And I also think it's really strange for him to say that she's not genuine, when it was him and Nancy that was talking about her behind her back in code, and they also had code words for everybody in the house. So I fail to see how he thinks that's being genuine. And considering Big Brother has still got quite a few weeks left, it's way too early to assume that Jenny's going to coast through to the end based on what Sam and Nancy said about her, because the two of them are up for eviction, and obviously they don't know that this week's a fake eviction. But I don't know, I just don't really get what the problem is with her. I actually think that if I was in the house, we would really go on, up until she said that she believes in God but she doesn't believe in aliens, and then I'd be like, right, okay, let's reassess this situation here. This is insane. But that doesn't mean to say that she's not a nice person or that she's not funny, or I think that she's really genuine. Well, that's how she comes across to me. But I do think that in tonight's task, she took the cheek too far. I didn't know why they were doing that. The doctor said that Tate was born and needs a personality transplant, so he had to sit in a chair, and Marcus went round with like the buzzy thing and shocked him. We know fine well that he shocked him most of the time on purpose. But I don't agree with shocking people. If I was doing a task, right, and I had to shock somebody, I don't think I'd be able to do it. It just reminds me of experiments that were done in the war. And it's an experiment to see, like, if somebody with a lab coat on tells you to do something, will you do it? And it's one of the things with Big Brother. It's like, Big Brother is telling you to deliberately hurt somebody, so will you do it? If the person said, like, it's fine, I don't mind, do it, then I'd do it. But I'm not into it. Zila and Nancy's treatment was to wear like clown makeup and a wig. Is that all they had to do? That's all I remember, but if that was all, then that was pretty easy. The doctors were calling the ward and asking for tea, and then they were phoning Richard and saying, where's the tea? And Richard says, oh, we've only got so many people in the ward, we can't leave the ward. And Caroline was like, oh, what a job's worth, tell me to bring the tea in. If he'd have done what she said, then they probably would have failed the task. I didn't understand the attitude of the doctors. Did I miss something where it told you that the doctors had to be cunts? I just don't get it. But then Jenny said something about, oh, no wonder doctors are striking all the time. And they were laughing at her, but doctors strike all the time where I live. When they were getting their points, Big Brother says that Caroline, when she was given the medication to Tasia, she was too rough. I can't remember exactly what he said, but they lost points for that. Marcus was flirting with the patients, or patient. Jenny was shouting at people on the phone. And actually, when Caroline phoned Richard and she says, how's the patients doing? She's like, oh, can you repeat that louder? Can you repeat that louder? And Richard was just like, fuck off. I can't be bothered with this. I'm going to be honest with you, it took a lot more than I would have, but he still managed to stay composed for the sake of the task. I thought he honestly just done such a great job. And then one of the nurses was sleeping, so they lost points for that. But they ended up passing the task with exactly the amount of points they needed. Overall, I thought this task was quite good. It's always interesting when they do these experiments and they put the housemates in different levels of power. Because as we've seen time and time and time again, when you put somebody in a position of power, they end up ripping the piss. It happens every single year. Like, they did it last year with the politicians, and they had to decide who had to get the money for roadworks and how much they had to put into it, and then they were getting like luxury food and all that. And it's a very popular experiment, but it always ends the same. But let me know what you thought of tonight's episode, and I'll see you again tomorrow. And I think on Saturday or at the weekend at some point, I'm going to go live, because I haven't been live for ages. But I'll see you then. Bye!